You know, I love living in Avalon. I love living in Pittwater.
Yes.
We've been here since '61. And I think the thing I love about it is it's such a casual place to be. I love the atmosphere. I mean, if you walk into Avalon and you see someone in a suit, you assume she's going to Sydney because it's just so casual here. And why the tall covered protection for them?
Firstly, this has to be fenced in because of the wallabies.
Oh, good heavens.
And then we found that the first fence wasn't high enough, they just jumped over.
Good grief.
So we have to do it higher, and would you believe they will still try to get over?
Good heavens. And then you have to individually protect the plants as well.
In case they do, we protect them as well inside.
See.
It's a lot of work to come and do bush care here.
Yes, well, I'm thinking that's a certain factor of bush care that not a lot of bush care groups would face. I know people down further to say, no, we're all the same, but I don't think we are. I like the fact that we had trees. I mean, this of course is unique here, but you think in other areas the trees dominate. The trees loom over the buildings for the most part, whereas in other areas the buildings loom over the trees. So I love the fact that the Palm Beach beachfront doesn't look like the Manly beachfront. I like the fact that the Newport shopping strip doesn't look like the DY shopping strip. The Warriewood industrial area is nothing like Brookvale industrial area. So there are differences. And I think our council, which obviously is very responsive, is aware of that. I heard the term the other night, social responsibility, and I think Pittwater Council is aware of its social responsibility. And that is why we have an environmental levy, which was established when we became Pittwater, because, I mean, the situation was dire then. We had been so badly neglected by Warringah. I mean, they took our rates, but the money went to the big town hall at DY. The money went to building the aquatic centre at Allambie. Money went to building Glen Street Theatre. So the built environment has done well. But things that you can't really quantify, like bushland, they didn't see the need to provide any money for that. So our area was neglected. So when we became Pittwater, we had an issue. I mean, examples of how we felt exploited and why we were so angry. When we were part of Warringah, a decision was made at DY to give a local contractor a lease to get sand from Avalon sandhills. So this contractor would come along and he had a certain area behind the sandhill and he would just shovel the sand into his truck and off they'd go. Despite our 3 councillors, because of course we had 3 councillors and there were 9 other councillors, despite our 3 councillors and the locals saying, no, we don't want that, we were ignored. So some local ladies took the matter into their own hands. They got their picnic baskets, they got their rugs, they went there early in the morning before the men had arrived, and they just sat there. The men arrived and realised that they could not shift these women. The police were called, council rangers came, and the women just refused to move. They said, we don't want our sandhill destroyed like this. So ultimately, Warringah cancelled the contract with the building contractor. So that was sort of a people power thing, and I think that was sort of gave people an inkling that we were different, we weren't going to stand by, even if at times we were overruled, as we were with Dunbar Park. Now Dunbar Park's the park that is in the Avalon Shop Centre. The northern part of Dunbar Park has a strange shape. If you go down there you'll notice that, and the reason is DY people, staff and council decided that they could rezone part of Dunbar Park for residential and sell it to developers. Our 3 councillors said no. The Avalon people said no, and we were outnumbered and outvoted. So that's why Dunbar Park has a unit block on the northern part of it. And of course, the final outrage was the Dalmage building. We didn't want a 9-storey building in Mona Vale, but of course, to a council that had approved shipmates at Coleroy, what's 9 stories? So despite our protests, and there were a lot of protests, despite the efforts of our 3 councillors, we had the Dalmage building was approved and built at Mona Vale. And that really was the catalyst for us leaving. I believe that really the division of resources wasn't as equitable as it could have been, I believe. And so Pittwater found itself with a sadly neglected area. So with the support of the locals, an environmental levy was imposed. Now, an environmental levy is not the sort of thing that will prove profitable, because it's just about preserving the native bushland. And so they were prepared to do it, and we were prepared to pay it because we wanted the area to be enhanced and the neglect redressed. So, I mean, we had issues like stormwater damage because there was no curb and guttering, and there was terrible erosion. There was pollution of the waterways, all because we had been neglected for these basic infrastructure things. So we sort of picked ourselves up and got on with it. And I think there's a sort of ownership by a lot of people in Pittwater because of that, because we made ourselves. We were the ones who formed Pittwater, and so we have a great sense of ownership. We also have a sense of involvement. I'm sure the councillors would agree that they get a lot of people contacting them about things, and they do things. I mean, I look at the bush care groups. That to me is an indication of the sense of engagement of the community. There are dozens of different bush care groups. There are also other volunteer groups. I mean, every year Pittwater Council has a reception for the volunteers, but there are so many volunteer groups that they've actually had to limit it to only 2 people from each volunteer group, which to me is just an indication of how many groups there are. I mean, Avalon Library only has 1 paid employee. That 7-day-a-week library is staffed by volunteers. So it's a place where people feel they have a sense of ownership, and I think the council itself seems to have a sense of social responsibility. I mean, we had all this talk about economical viability, and this is supposedly the reason that we are being forced to amalgamate. It doesn't seem logical that a council that is viable, popular, and which is working and has spent a lot of ratepayers' money to prove it, should be forced to disappear into a larger council, which will not have the same priorities as us. They will not. In an area that has so much built environment, surely can't really see the value in spending money on unspoiled areas like this. And this, to regenerate this, obviously would have cost a lot of money. I mean, you volunteered your time, but there would have been council oversight and equipment. It must have cost money, and it's fantastic for us, but maybe it's not a financially profitable exercise. I mean, I can remember when we were part of Warringah before, if a development was proposed in the area, our council would say, but there are trees, and there'd be disbelief from the other council. They think, you've got plenty of trees, what's with a few trees? A bit like with the sand. They say, you've got plenty of sand. So I fear for our future. If Pittwater is amalgamated, if we are swallowed up with Warringah and or Manly, I fear for Pittwater. I fear that the specialness, the uniqueness of Pittwater will disappear, because we will be in the midst of a council where the priorities are the built environment, and our special, unique, natural environment will come off second best.